All right, joining me live is Gopal Shankaranarayanan. Through your initial reaction on this historic, some would say, Supreme Court judgment.
Thanks for having me. I think it's a magnificent moment for a number of reasons. We've had a unanimous judgment of 5 of the Supreme Court's justices sitting together and giving 4 different opinions as to why they agree that 377 is a retrograde provision as far as it deals with consenting individuals. I think it's important to understand that, as Justice Nariman has put it in his separate but concurring opinion, that this is not a question only of decriminalization, it's a question about the direction that civilization will take, and it's also a question of the constitutional rights of our minorities. I think it's very, very important to understand that sentiment which is at the heart of this judgment, because going forward, while some small step has been taken today on behalf of the LGBTQ community, large steps need to be taken in the future for that community, and we also need this kind of a barrier laid down by India's Supreme Court to protect the people of this India, particularly small numbers, small minorities, against any kind of excessive action. The initial judgment, which was rendered by the Chief Justice Deepak Mishra, to which Justice Kanvilkar concurred and signed off on, went through the gamut of what 377 had been, of how it was excessive and it violated the rights of privacy under Article 21 and the right of equality under Article 14, and that a classification between those who have natural and so-called unnatural sex is completely contrary to the constitutional scheme. Justice Nariman then read out his judgment and pointed out that sin is not a department of the Parliament or the government to interfere with, even if they think that this is immoral, etc. And he went further to say that small steps have to be taken from here on for the empowerment of that community. He also referred to previous judgments of the Supreme Court with reference to women working in restaurants and of the transgender community being recognized, as well as Puttaswamy's judgment dealing with the right to privacy being recognized, and said that going forward, this is a further building block in looking at what our constitutional aims and objectives are. Justice Chandrachud then read out his judgment, and he also concurred on the question of constitutional morality and its place in the present scheme. Justice Indu Malhotra was the final one to read her judgment and said that there has been a history of wrongdoing against the LGBTQ community, and that this is the time to bring a halt to the excesses of 377 as far as they are concerned. All the judges have concurred in reading down Section 377 to the extent that it criminalizes non-consensual, that it criminalizes consensual conduct among adults.
Indeed, some very valid points you make there, Gopal Shankaranarayanan. But talk also a bit about, if you will, about the history of Section 377. This is a law that dates back to 1861. Now, some would ask, why did it take the Indian courts 157 years to strike it down? But others would contend that this is one of those rare exceptions, rare cases when the courts have taken a lead over the legislature even before social acceptability came around.
Well, the idea of India's constitution is not about social acceptability, because if it were about social acceptability, we would only be running by way of rule of majority on everything. The idea of having a fundamental rights chapter is so that the rights of individuals will be protected and preserved even if the majority are persecuting them. So you may have a religious majority, you may have a casteist majority, you may have a sexual majority. In all these situations, you can't have the small people who are the minorities in each circumstance being victimized. That's what the Constitution stands for. So when we gained independence, this provision did not come to be tested until much later, until almost 5 decades in. Primarily because 377 is one of those under the radar things. because of social acceptability issues, people didn't want to bring it to court. Even earlier, when it was brought to court in the Delhi High Court and then came to the Supreme Court in Naz Foundation and Suresh Kaushal's cases, it came through organizations. It didn't come through individuals as it has today in Navtej Johor's case. So it has for a long time been considered something that you don't want to be seen to be the person who took this issue to court. Secondly, Section 377 has a slightly wider ambit than only the LGBTQ community. In fact, consensual oral sex, consensual anal sex between consenting heterosexual adults is also criminalized by this provision. Bestiality is criminalized by this provision. For a long time, until we had the POCSO Act come in, child abuse was criminalized by this provision. So the carving out was what was required, and that is what an exemplary judgment of the Delhi High Court, penned by Justice Shah and Justice Muralidhar, did several years ago. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court reversed that ruling, and today we have justice finally done, because the Suresh Kaushal judgment of the Supreme Court from 5-6 years ago has been resoundingly overruled by all the 5 judges on this bench.
Indeed, and Gopal, thank you for putting this judgment into context here for our viewers who might just be tuning in. But before I let you go, Gopal, I want to ask you one last question. What's next for the LGBT rights in India, be it the right to marry, right to adopt children?
Well, I think it's not going to be easy. It's a fight that they're going to have to fight. The good thing that we saw was that the court is stepping in to take strong steps on behalf of the community. The unfortunate thing we saw was the government of India itself decided to sit on the fence and say that, look, we can easily repeal this law, but we're not going to do it. We're going to allow you to go to court and we'll support you in court. And that's what they did. They supported the community in court when they easily could have just made the law to end this entire thing.
Just 1 minute, Gopal. So what does that tell you about the legislature in India today? What does that speak to you about the legislature, the lawmakers of the country over successive decades? What does that speak to you about?
Yes. Well, it's very, very simple. They are concerned only with one issue, and that is their electorate. If they feel the electorate is going to be divided on something which is unpopular, even though it's correct, politically, morally, constitutionally correct, even then, they will not take the right step. That's the obvious conclusion we take, and they will pass the buck onto the Supreme Court. Now, they are obviously testing this again and again. There are many times when you know the government wouldn't mind what the Supreme Court has done, but they deliberately don't take those steps themselves. And that is what is shocking, and let's hope some reform comes soon.
Right, Gopal, thank you once again for elucidating on this historic judgment from the Supreme Court. You were listening to Gopal Shankaranarayanan, senior lawyer practicing in the India's top court, who was talking about the history of the jurisprudence itself about Section 377, which was struck down by India's top court just moments ago. It is a historic day, no doubt, for the LGBT community in India. The country's top court decriminalising homosexuality, saying that consensual gay sex is now legal in India. It struck down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which was a British colonial era law that dates back to 1861. So it's been a 157-year-old law that was struck down by India's top court, making consensual gay sex legal in India. Right, so you're watching the continuous coverage here on Wion of the celebrations breaking out across India after the Supreme Court of India delivered a judgment declaring consensual gay sex legal, striking down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, calling it unconstitutional. We'll get you all the latest reactions coming in from lawmakers and LGBT activists across the country. These are latest visuals coming to you from Chennai. And in the meantime, I'm told we can also listen in to the reactions coming in from Congress lawmaker Shashi Tharoor. Listen in.
Consensual acts of adults in private. What we have found ourselves doing in this country is that we have allowed the government to interfere in the private lives of people, to discriminate against people on the basis of their sexual orientation, and to infringe on the rights and freedoms that our Constitution has long upheld. The Supreme Court today has stood up for equality of treatment of all our citizens. It has stood up for the dignity of individuals irrespective of their personal preferences. And it has stood up ultimately for...
Right, so you're listening to Congress lawmaker Shashi Tharoor, who was talking to reporters after the Supreme Court judgment striking down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. It is 40 minutes past noon in India. I want to bring our viewers up to speed with more reactions coming in this moment.
जो समानता के ऊपर है, भेदभाव के खिलाफ है, डिग्निटी के ऊपर है, लिबर्टी के ऊपर है, धारा 21, धारा 19 फ्रीडम्स हैं और ये जो बुनियादी हक है उनके आधार पे ये फैसला दिया गया है और आगे भी जो कोई विषय आएंगी वो इसी आधार पे ही दी जाएंगी.
Right, so it is indeed a landmark verdict in India. The country's top court has overturned a 157-year-old law that criminalised homosexuality. A 5-judge constitution bench of India's top court has unanimously ruled that gay sex is not a crime in India anymore. It has ruled that there is nothing unnatural about it. The court upheld the freedom of choice for the LGBT community, saying that their rights are equal to those of any other Indian citizen. The court said Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which criminalises consensual homosexual acts, must be struck down as it violates Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. The court says to deny the LGBT community of their right to sexual orientation is a denial of their right to sexual orientation, denial of their citizenship, discriminatory, and a violation of their freedom of expression and privacy. The court called Section 377 irrational and arbitrary. However, sex with animals under Section 377 continues to remain a criminal act. Right, as we're watching celebrations breaking out in India's capital, New Delhi, time to bring our viewers up to speed with why this ruling was such a big deal for India. As I mentioned before, the ban on homosexuality in India lasted for 156 years, and the journey to change the archaic colonial era law has been a challenging one. Right, so the law criminalized carnal intercourse against the order of nature, which means, in effect, it punished gay sex when large parts of the world are championing the essential human rights of the LGBTQI communities to exercise their free choice. And with the new verdict, consensual sexual relations between same-sex adults is now decriminalized. This change in the law will now give the LGBT community the right to live happy, equal lives without discrimination or hate. Right, so just to bring our viewers up to speed with the news breaking here in India at the moment, India's top court striking down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code and declaring that consensual gay sex is now legal. It struck down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, calling it unconstitutional. And celebrations breaking out across India as LGBT activists welcome the Supreme Court judgment. Remember, this was a British colonial era law that dates back to 1861, so it's been an arduous uphill struggle for the LGBTI community in India for getting this far. Right, so homosexuality remains one of the world's most debatable issues, and many countries around the world continue to decriminalize, but India has now decided to make consensual gay sex legal. The judgment was delivered by a 5-judge constitution bench of India's top court, which gave a concurring unanimous verdict striking down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, calling it unconstitutional. And saying that consensual gay sex is now legal in India. Right, so it's been a landmark verdict in India. The country's apex court has overturned, as I said, a 157-year-old law that criminalised homosexuality. A 5-judge constitution bench of India's top court unanimously ruled that gay sex is not a crime in India anymore. It has ruled that there is nothing unnatural about it. The court upheld the freedom of choice for the LGBT community, saying that their rights are equal to those of any other Indian citizen. The court said that Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which criminalises consensual homosexual acts, must be struck down as it violates Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. The court said to deny the LGBT community of their right to sexual orientation is a denial of their right to sexual orientation, denial of their citizenship, discriminatory, and a violation of their freedom of expression and privacy. The court called Section 377 irrational and arbitrary. And since then, we've seen celebrations breaking out across the country, in New Delhi, in Chennai, in all the other metropolitan cities, where LGBT activists have welcomed the unanimous verdict by the 5-judge constitution bench of India's top court, which struck down Section 377, saying it was unconstitutional because it was irrational and arbitrary. Right, so just to bring our viewers up to speed with the news from India, it's 46 minutes past noon here in India. And the big news coming out of India's top court that Section 377 has been scrapped because it is unconstitutional, irrational and arbitrary. And the 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court declaring in its judgment, unanimous verdict, that consensual gay sex is not a crime in India anymore. Right, this might be a good moment for viewers who are just tuning in to listen in to all the reactions that have poured in the last few minutes. Listen in.
कुछ शब्द नहीं मिल रहे हैं कि किस तरीके से बात करें, क्या बात करें, but yes, finally we feel like that we are the safe, we are our country, think about it, and our constitution think about it. So we are feeling so happy. I'm so proud of it.
In your favor? I don't know. I mean, right now, to be honest with you, I'm just happy. I'm just happy, and I just hope that the fallout of this verdict would at least pave the way for more civil liberties, more we can now at least walk towards more equality at least in this country.
We are all not facing stigma, discrimination from now onwards. Oh, thank you so much, Supreme Court of India. They are legalized LGBTIQ community. Thanks a lot.
And anymore from now onwards, we are not criminal. We can live our life as who we are. Yeah. We are really happy. Thank you, Supreme Court. Thanks to one and all who are worked for this. We are very happy.
Well, all that I have to say to Supreme Court is a big thank you. Our voice has been heard, and the fact that all the judges came together and it was a consensus decision that they have respected us, and finally justice has been delivered. This is the happiest day of our lives.
It's a very momentous judgment. The Supreme Court has, consistent with constitutional morality and constitutional jurisprudence, decriminalised homosexuality in various forms. It has built its judgment on the pillars of equality, liberty and human dignity. After the Puttaswamy judgment and after the Nalsa judgment, consistent with the dignitarian ethos of the Indian Constitution, the court, as the custodian of liberties of individuals, has held that excluding the right of choice of individuals is unconstitutional and is not permissible. This is a great day in the evolution of countries' libertarian, humanitarian and dignitarian jurisprudence.
Right, so there you heard all the reactions coming in after the landmark verdict by the Supreme Court of India, which struck down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, calling it unconstitutional, arbitrary and irrational. Celebrations breaking out in Chennai as we speak. These are visuals from Chennai, and meanwhile we're getting more reactions thick and fast. Let's listen in to some more reactions coming in.
It is Article 14, Article 21, Article 15 बता रहा है और ह्यूमन राइट्स भी बार-बार वही बता रहा था। ये जो लड़ाई है ये आज की लड़ाई नहीं है, तो पहले 18-19 साल से ये लड़ाई चल रही थी। ये जो संप्रदाय है ये भारत के बहुत पुराने संप्रदाय है, हम लोग जानते हैं। ब्रिटिशर ने जो नियम लगा के गए थे हमारे भारतवर्ष में, ये हमारा जो संवैधानिक लड़ाई को लेके, हमारे जो अधिकार को लेके लड़ाई था, जाति वर्ण निर्विशेष में हमारा संविधान बोलता है कि कास्ट रिलीजन सेक्स सब लोग समान है। और आज का जो राय प्रकाश है ये कोई नई बात नहीं है। मैं आज इंडिविजुअल एक्सपेक्ट कर रही थी कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ये राय देंगे, क्योंकि भारत की डेमोक्रेसी इज ए एग्जाम्पल ऑफ ऑल ओवर द इंडिया, ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड। सारे विश्व में भारत की संविधान को माना जाता है क्योंकि ये डेमोक्रेटिक स्टेट है, प्रत्येक की समान अधिकार को ये साब्यस्त करती है। मैं माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट का धन्यवाद दूंगी और इसके साथ जुड़े हुए सारे मीडियाज को भारतवर्ष की मैं धन्यवाद दूंगी, क्योंकि आपका सपोर्ट बहुत रहा है, और सारे जनसाधारण को भी धन्यवाद दूंगी, क्योंकि आज की सेंचुरी में हम बात करते हैं कि इक्वल रेस्पेक्ट, इक्वल राइट और एवरी ह्यूमन बीइंग इज इक्वल। नोबडी कैन बी मार्जिनलाइज इन रेस्पेक्टेड टू देयर जेंडर एक्सप्रेशन। मैं साधना अगर हूँ तो मैं अपने आइडेंटिटी में आज जी रही हूँ, और ये मेरी अधिकार है कि मैं अपने स्वाभिमान के साथ जीऊँ।
Right, so celebrations breaking out in most Indian cities. These visuals coming to you from Mumbai, where LGBT activists are welcoming the Supreme Court judgment making consensual gay sex legal. You're watching the continuous coverage here on Wion of the news coming in from India, and I'm told some more reactions are coming in this moment. Listen in.
We have to achieve our civil rights. This is very, very, very important, number one. And number two is, not only this judgment, today, I mean the other judgment regarding the Sudha Bharadwaj, along with other human rights activists, social activists, those who are in the home imprisonment, if you say confinement, so their judgment is also awaited. So we are looking forward regarding the judgment as well. So if we are very, very hopeful that the judgment will be also in positive, then only our full celebration.
Legal in his country, I want it to be legal in ours.
That's the next slide.
No, I'm French.
Now, how do you react after this verdict?
Well, it's amazing, it's aligning, it's nice. India is going to all the same level than all those countries for human rights, and it's nice, it's amazing. Of course, it's amazing.
Thank you.
So, Pride Indian. Thank you.
Okay, what would you like?
Is that, you are
Right, so you were listening to reactions coming in after India's top court struck down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, declaring consensual gay sex legal. This is a momentous, a landmark verdict by the Supreme Court, the country's apex court, overturning a 157-year-old law that criminalised homosexuality. A 5-judge constitution bench of India's top court unanimously ruling that gay sex is not a crime in India anymore. The bench ruled that there is nothing unnatural about it. The court also upheld the freedom of choice for the LGBT community, saying that their rights are equal to those of any other Indian citizen. The court said Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which criminalises consensual homosexual acts, must be struck down as it violates Article 14 of the Indian Constitution.